capital markets is really reinventing itself using blockchain technology. If you have a shareholders agreement, there's maybe 90% of the clauses that could be already in place and already encoded in smart contracts. You should consider Switzerland because that's a place, if you comply with the rules, you will be able to raise capital and attract great investors. With the new DLT infrastructure, the central depository will not be, necessary.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another issue of Stobox interviews, where we bring industry professionals and rock stars to discuss the future of tokenization, crypto, crowdfunding, and finance in general. My name is Boris. I am co-founder and head of business analytics at Stobox. And today we're welcoming our guest, Florian Ducommun. Florian is a prominent Swiss lawyer, partner at HDC law firm, co-founder of Legal Factory, and head of asset tokenization at Crypto Valley, one of the leading industry association in Switzerland and in world at all. Florian, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a
Today
pleasure.
we also have my colleague and co-host Ross, co-founder and CEO at Stobox.
Yeah, thank you, Boris.
Florian, please tell us more about yourself and your activities.
So my name is Florian Ducommun. I'm a tech and IP lawyer based in Switzerland in the Lake Geneva area. I'm advising companies in open source projects. That's what actually led me to advise companies in the blockchain field and more fintech and regtech and legal tech. So my practice is very much focused on technology, intellectual property rights, and tokenization.
Thank you. As a head of asset tokenization at Crypto Valley, you're deeply involved in the tokenization market. After these years and based on your experience, do you still think that it is a promising one and that it will revolutionize business financing and capital markets?
Yes, I definitely think it is a very promising market for two main reasons. I think capital markets is really reinventing itself using new technologies, including blockchain technology for trading, for clearing and settlement. So basically what we are observing today is that the capital markets are organizing themselves using decentralized and distributed ledger technology. So basically in Switzerland, we have this year, we'll enter in force a new type of license for financial markets, a license called Distributed Ledger Technology Financial Infrastructure License, which allows actually exchanges to trade securities using the blockchain. So as soon as these secondary market, very regulated, organized, and formal markets will be up and running, operated actually by the Swiss Stock Exchange for one of the market, there will be a big process for companies to tokenize their shares, meaning basically issue their shares using blockchain technology, tokens, Ethereum or other technologies to have their shares represented and incorporated within token.
I want to mention that STO and tokenization, it is not only about attracting capital, it is about shifting company completely online to issuing your securities and to manage your investors and manage the cap table of investors. And what we see and what I personally think from my perspective, that more and more businesses with COVID situation, of course, they looking for new technologies to make their operation more effective and to find new investors who can participate in their company to attract more funds. And it is great that Switzerland have a great traction in legislation and in ecosystem to provide these solutions, to provide the, for example, tokenization hub to connect businesses, with government, and with investors?
Yes, I would say there's a big convergence at the moment between, what we discussed, financial market using the blockchain technology, the fact that general meetings, due to the COVID situation, can be held online, and digital and the e-signature that also allows to validate documents, corporate documents online. So this convergence of elements, plus the fact that the new law is entering in force this year in Switzerland, allowing transfer of shares on the blockchain, validly speaking, it's really a convergence of elements that push through the tokenization process of the companies. And I would add another point. Once you have issued your shares using tokens, then you have to think about your shareholders agreement, how you will actually trigger your preemptive rights, how you will trigger your drag-along rights, your tag-along rights. And the fact of using blockchain technology allows you to code that in the smart contract, allows the board actually to trigger the call options or tag-along. And this is maybe the missing link. And once this will be in place, once we have not only the cap table, but also the shareholders agreement coded, that will be a real value added actually to the governance of companies.
I tend to agree. And we have a similar vision. And one of the directions where the technology evolves and what we are coding is doing this kind of things, such as preemptive rights or drag-along provisions embedded in the smart contract into the code of the securities issued with our technology. Although my concern is, and when we have been communicating with clients, we didn't often hear from them such requirements. They are much more often asking about whether we can help them with drafting legal documents or with finding investors. Then they are asking about whether we have corporate government procedures automated on the technology level. And I'm wondering to hear about your perspective. Do you often hear such kind of demands?
Yes, I mean, we have a lot of demand for legal documents, for drafting prospectus, for offering the shares, the tokenized shares or the tokenized participation bonds, participation certificates using blockchain technology. And we need this legal environment around to be safe on the regulatory side. However, I think the legal document can be, to a largest extent, could be optimized, and this process could be streamlined. If you have a shareholders agreement for, let's say, startup or even more mature companies that can be used, there's maybe 90% of the clauses that could be already in place and already encoded in smart contracts. And then you have some additional layer where lawyers can add value. You need human behind the technology to think about properly and structure properly. But I think we can streamline the process and the legal documents to a greater extent than what we know today. And that's the type of work I'm trying to push with my company called Legal Factory. So what we do when we do, let's say, STO process for clients, then we try to optimize the documents in order to be able to use them again and again. And once they're ready, then we can, develop a small bot with the questions that are needed to fill them in. And then you have maybe 10 or 15% of the work that is done by a human, but a lot is done before the work is optimized. So I think in order to have in place the environment for tokenization, we need to have like standard shareholders agreement from the startup perspective and from the investor perspective, then with encoded rights. And I mean, this is some work to be done, but I'm confident that once this will be in place, this will even, speed up the process of tokenization. Because raising funds through tokens is one thing, then you have to be able to administer your company and maintain the governance at a high level and make sure that your shares are not out there without any control. So that's key, actually, in my perspective, to have these elements in place.
That's powerful. And I assume many business owners underestimate the complexity of managing hundreds or thousands of investors after they actually completed their token offering.
Just one point there. I think that you're right. And if you have like thousands of investors and you want to make a next round of investment, and you need to get waivers from all your investors, if you don't have the mechanism in place, that could actually make your company at risk, because you can't send thousands of waivers over. So you need to have a mechanism to get documents for the next round, or to have waivers for the right of subscription. You have to anticipate this. And if you don't do it, you can have your company at risk.
Going to the next point, I've been wondering, we've been speaking to lawyers from many jurisdictions, from US, from Liechtenstein, from other countries, and I'm wondering, what is the benefit from your perspective of Switzerland compared to all of these other jurisdictions who also are quite beneficial for STO?
I think Switzerland has quite early understood that it had to reinvent the financial place here and the whole financial system. And from a very early stage, the government and the regulator have been in favor of blockchain technology. So that means early 2017, Ethereum Foundation based in Zug, it all started a very promising environment here in Switzerland. And I think also the legislator did a great job with adapting the legal framework to distributed ledger technology. And I think as an onshore legislation and business place, Switzerland has a very good reputation internationally. And if you comply with the Swiss rules and the Swiss regulatory aspects, you're kind of sure that you can attract capital from all over the world. And I think that's one of the main advantage, because the technology is understood. Legally speaking, the framework is in place. So there's no legal uncertainty for investors, and there's capital. And so I think these are good factors for our jurisdiction. Compared to US, I think we recently saw the Ripple SEC against Ripple case, which clarified very much, the securities framework, the approach to securities of the US regulator. So basically, as soon as you have kind of a centralized infrastructure, you will be considered as issuing securities. It's not the case in Switzerland. If basically you are a company and you self-issue your own securities, you can tokenize them, you can offer them, if you comply with the prospectus requirements, you can offer them to the market. It's only when they are tradable and mass tradable on secondary markets that it will be considered as becoming securities. So it's not as strict as the US perspective. So basically, as far as payment tokens, utility tokens, even stablecoin are concerned, you will not fall very quickly into the securities law. And so I think there's a different approach to securities law, which also gives a comparative advantage to Switzerland.
Yeah, because it is very important for the businesses to know the rules of the game and to know how they can manage the new technologies. And we see that a lot of blockchain applications, they developing very fast. And it is great when the countries and government can adopt new technologies and to build new laws, for example, and to provide for local projects, for example, attract new investors and to open new opportunities. And with adoption of CBDC and with adoption of tokenization of shares, we will see the competition of the jurisdictions to be more attractable from the investor perspective?
Yeah, what I must say, however, is that the way the Swiss regulatory approach is basically done, it's not a quick and fast way to get your license and quick and fast way to get your company operating. It takes time. So if you want to have the Swiss brand in your project, you need to be to allocate time. So I had many companies, in 2018 with the crypto rush, we had 100 demands literally a day to incorporate companies and advise blockchain projects. And for many of them, they wanted to go too fast for our legislation because it's not an offshore legislation. You can't open a shell company like this. You need to have a bank account. You have to be approved by a bank. You will do your due diligence. So it's really for, like, I would say for really people that have time to invest and have also the wish to build something on the long term. I wouldn't choose Switzerland for a quick ICO just to issue token and then do some scammy project. That's not the place to go.
Yeah, and as I know that in Switzerland there are a lot of opportunities for blockchain companies. For example, I know that you can pay for initial capital of your company in Bitcoin, for example.
Yes, definitely.
And it's amazing.
So it's like an in-kind investment in your company, but you have to evaluate you have to have an auditor that confirms that you have that amount of Bitcoin that is worth that amount, and you can use that as an in-kind to incorporate your company. But you also need to go through the process of having a bank account, because if you want to operate a company, you need a bank account. And that's, in 2018, that's where the process slowed down a bit, because a lot of, due to the political push, a lot of companies came here. Crypto Valley had a big, brand, and a lot of people came here to do business, but banks were reluctant. And as soon as you had blockchain in the corporate purpose, it took more time, and then, it was difficult to open bank accounts. Now the situation is a bit different. You have some crypto banks, you have some facilities to open bank accounts.
Infrastructure,
but it's still something that is not done overnight. It still takes time. So you just need to be aware that if you want to do things by the book, and you will never do everything 100% right, but you're pushing to do the best that you can do to be on the safe side from a regulatory perspective, then you should consider Switzerland, because that's a place, if you comply with the rules applicable here on blockchain project, you will be able to raise capital and attract great investors and have some traction. But I also aware that, for blockchain, there's a run going on. You need to be fast, to be the first on the market. You need to be agile, to adapt to DeFi. So sometimes, depending on the nature of the project, you don't want to become a bank. You want to evolve in an environment which is not that much regulated. So it's really dependent on the nature and the approach of the founders that you can pick and choose the right jurisdiction.
What you say reminds me about our interview with Alona Yudina from Switzerland, and I advise our viewers to watch it as well if they are interested. She mentioned as well that in Switzerland, trust is crucial, and it just takes time to build the trust in the community and start communicating with everyone. By the way, mentioning the case of the Ripple, it seems that in the US, almost anything that can appreciate will become a security token, which can be true about any kind of asset, even gold. So they're quite stifling innovation with that. We also had such feedback in the discussion with one of our US friends, Josh, in the interview. He mentioned that, on his opinion, SEC kills innovation in the US.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, so moving to another topic, legal is one of the biggest components of the STO costs in general, because we are talking about a very regulated market, and which raises the barrier for smaller companies. So what costs should companies expect in Switzerland and how it can be reduced?
Yeah, I think, it's like in the EU, it depends on the level of investment that you are trying to raise. So above 8 million, the prospectus requirement will become more robust. And below 8 million, it's a very light investment memorandum. So it really depends on the amount raised. But I think the process, for tokenizing being, I defined with the Crypto Valley a process, amendment of the Articles of Association. So you need to have a notary, so you have costs. Then you have, the internal regulations. Then you have the prospectus or the investment memorandum. And all these documents have been already drafted. So basically what we can do is, as I discussed before, we can reuse quite a lot of the documents as templates and adapt them to the situation of the client, which allows us to reduce the cost and really in a wish to push for tokenization and to avoid legal fees being a burden to this process. So I would say 15 to 20,000 basically is the minimum. You need 50K to incorporate the company in Switzerland. And I would say in the end, potentially half of this initial capital would be used for structuring the project, legally speaking. If you want to have a FINMA no action letter, it's 2,000 to 3,000. So yeah, I would say globally with 25K, you can structure a project. And we always start with the legal assessment, saying, well, what is the regulatory path to actually be able to go on the market with this project? And once this legal assessment is done, then we have a way to structure the documents, which is now used, and it works quite well. So yeah, I would say it's always difficult for lawyers to give like prices, but that's the rate.
It is completely matching with my vision, and templates. It is great. It is one of the ways to reduce the costs, and it is right. And what we see from our experience communicating with the clients regarding the tokenization, the big pain from investors' perspective, that when they're communicating with the common lawyers, yes, they pay $1,000 to educate them what blockchain is and tokenization. And it is very great that there are companies like Legal Factory and you, Florian, who can advise and who can honestly give the opportunities to reduce the costs and to provide the comprehensive services regarding the preparation of legal documentation and to avoid some pitfalls and cost, of course.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a very specific area of the law. It's not, if you are like practicing standard law, indeed, you will need time to understand the topics, understand the challenges, the pitfalls. What we try to do, we try to participate also to the legislative process, to comment on the project of laws, to bring some value by articles, and also anticipate. I wrote an article on staking maybe 1 year ago, and staking was not, proof of stake was not very addressed legally speaking. So we try to anticipate a bit the legal topics. I have one article on DeFi, which I will publish. I have one article on intellectual property right tokenization that I will publish. So I think we need to have a proactive approach, and that's the approach I learned because I went to McGill University, had this approach of being in the forefront of the law than just applying the law. And that's what I like. So that's how I like working and advising clients. And when we see some case, the Ripple case, let's say, then we push notifications to our clients saying, look, there's this case and that may evolve in this way and this direction. So we try to also be proactive with our customers and clients. And yeah, I think that's the only approach you can have in this field, because it's a moving target. So you have to be also very agile as your clients are.
Totally agree with this need for agility and being proactive, especially given how regulation is evolving and the fact that we need to drive the regulation to evolve in the right direction. For example, we are based in Ukraine and we also assist the local government in the development of the legislation for virtual assets so that they get everything right and it is simpler for local businesses to work in the digital assets sphere. And I wonder, in Switzerland, what is your communication with government? How comfortable it is, how responsive they are, and how do they support businesses in Switzerland?
So I think, yeah, that's a very good one. I think one of the advantage I didn't mention before is that we really have a direct line with the regulator, and that's not the case in many countries. So we know, FINMA, the Swiss supervisory authority, they have a fintech desk, and these are people that are quite young and understanding technology. So we can discuss, cases with them. We send them that, we describe the project, we explain our position from a regulatory perspective on the project, and we ask them to confirm that our approach is right. And sometimes they don't totally agree, and we discuss, they call us on the phone and we can discuss and adapt, So that's a very good approach towards the regulator. And when government is concerned, Switzerland is a federal state. So at the federal level, the Federal Council, so the government, has been very proactive in pushing for the blockchain technology, had made 2 very detailed reports on the legal aspects of blockchain. So really the reports are incredible in terms of precision, and so the government is very, very much pushing. At the cantonal level, here in Lausanne, let's say, or Lake Geneva area, the government has been also very welcoming for blockchain businesses. So I've been invited twice to go with them to Russia to meet with blockchain companies and also show them that Switzerland will welcome them. So there's been a good push from the economic development to attract companies here in Zug area, but also in Lake Geneva area. And so they provide, with all the contacts, with all the experts, with the universities, with the tech university, to incorporate your company and to have your work permit. So they're very helpful with foreign companies to make them come to Switzerland. And blockchain has been one of their focus for the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, agree with you. It is very powerful, and have a direct line with regulator is a big advantage. And when we talk about ecosystem and about Switzerland, as we know, one of the biggest challenges for companies who run fundraising is to find their investors. And how hard is to find investors as a Swiss project? So what is the most common type of STO investors, retail investors, or family offices, banks in Switzerland?
I think the very early STOs were more of seed rounds with using tokens and distributing your tokens on telegrams. It's been like in the past ICOs, so basically more private investors from what I saw. But now the market is really evolving very fast, and with institutional investors coming in, many now private banks and private bank clients wants to invest in crypto, in Bitcoin, and want to have a look at what's there in the market. So I think now it's becoming more also because of the legislation now that allows the transfer of shares on the blockchain. There's more legal security, so there's more appetite for institutional investors. And also, we have already 2 crypto banks that have banking license, and more to come. So I think the more crypto banks will be there in the market, the more deals we'll have with crypto. So of course, the appetite now is better for institutional investors.
I wonder how it changes the access to the market, because one of the big benefits of tokenization and how it evolved the capital was actually more access to retail capital for early stage companies. And with this possibility for reduced cost of capital, and also from the perspective of social impact, also improved corporate governance, because you have now more people and more diverse people participating in the corporate decision and board, etc. So I wonder, wouldn't it lead to the fact that actually retail clients are excluded again from the capital markets? What's your opinion?
No, I don't think so. I think you're right in saying that it's opening the investment and the capital markets to retail investors. But as far as you are concerned with a bigger amount of investment to scale, like Series B, Series C rounds, it's going to be mostly investment VC funds or investment banks that will also, underwrite the shares and put them on the market. And I think this will not change because they have the distribution and they have the access to the investors. But for early stage, as you say, seed round, maybe Series A, for giving this ignite the project and make the project grow. That would be a very interesting way to raise capital on an ongoing basis. On your website, invest in my company, and you can invest and you can buy shares. I think the process would very great. Like once this is in place for tech and startup companies, to raise fund on an ongoing basis rather than always going to the rounds of investment discussion with investors, which takes a lot of time for the founders. So I think for the early stage, that could optimize a lot the process.
Yeah, especially when the secondary markets are going to develop, it's going to become even more interesting for institutions and banks. And you previously mentioned that secondary markets in Switzerland are mostly developing on behalf of the already existing Swiss stock exchange. And as I remember, they hold the majority of financial licenses, financial infrastructure licenses in Switzerland. They're the central securities depository and the only stock exchange, etc. So is that financial infrastructure market so centralized in Switzerland? And are there any new emerging? Are there decentralized exchanges? Because, for example, with Stobox, we are very keen to look on the prospects of decentralized securities trading and whether it can actually reduce entry barriers for businesses on the secondary market.
Yeah, so the answer is with the new DLT infrastructure, financial market, the central depository will not be necessary because you have a distributed ledger. And you can trade, directly using this distributed ledger. So that's the big improvement. So that provides, it's a centralized market and exchange, but it uses a decentralized technology. So basically that removes, in terms of technology, that removes the intermediaries, brokers, central depository, and clearing and settlement is done, it's facilitated in a way. So that's for the financial infrastructure that is now being put in place. Decentralized exchanges is another topic, and it's mostly, at the moment, it's mostly something that is not regulated. It's a gray area, but the Federal Council stated in its report that it could be also falling under regulation in terms of, at least in terms of AML, and it will in the future, of course, it will be more and more regulated. But at the moment, there's still this zone where you don't really know where it's located. You don't really know who is to be regulated, like Bitcoin. So it's a way to evolve in this environment. But at the same time, if you are a company and you want to have an exchange, you need to have something in place that will be related to you. So you can't really launch a decentralized exchange unless you launch open source code, and then you are, you operate or you maintain this open source code, like Linux Foundation, let's say, and you provide that to the market, and then people can use that and implement the code at their level. I think there's room for type of Ethereum for trading, so I think that's something that could be very interesting.
Indeed, I think that actually KYC and AML should be applied to all kinds of financial transactions, even if all other kinds of regulations, such as approval of the white paper or prospectus, do not apply, and even if licenses do not apply, still basic things like AML should be in place. This is like a bare minimum, I would say.
That's totally our approach. Even for, when you raise capital as a company, you don't need to go through a KYC AML to have investors invest in your capital. But once you issue token to raise capital, then we recommend, going through the KYC AML, because the tokens then will potentially be exchanged or held in custody in banks, and you will need to have the traceability of the tokens. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that's something that should be by default and by design in the way we build the infrastructure.
Yeah, I think infrastructure that facilitates AML in the crypto finance will also develop, especially the personal identity, decentralized identity infrastructure as an integral part of the crypto infrastructure. When you have the crypto wallets that can provide access or are related to some kind of public key infrastructure, some identity storage or identity data, even though it is hashed and protected and quasi-anonymous, this still provides certain degree of tracking if necessary for the purposes of compliance and enforcement.
Yes, I mean, compliance is, everybody knows it, a very, one of the biggest costs for the traditional banking world. And I think one of the reasons for going digital is also to optimize, optimize the operations. And optimizing compliance through standardized KYC processes and is something that has the potential, the great potential of reducing costs for financial institutions, and of course that's one of the great benefits from cryptos.
Mm-hmm. Florian, thank you for the nice interview and nice discussion that we had. Thank you for the nice answers. We will leave your contact in the comments to this video in the description, so that all interested viewers could contact you on any matters that relates to the Swiss law. And we have many other videos with lawyers from around the world, from different jurisdictions, that allow you to learn more about legislation of digital securities and which jurisdiction works better for you. So we will leave everything in the description to the video. Thank you for being with us. Florian, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Ross.
Yeah, thank you, Boris.
And see you in the next episode. Bye.
Great.
Yeah, bye-bye.